Good day, everyone. Welcome to our first lesson on the foundations of crisis management and crisis leadership. In this session, we will examine what organizations must do before, during, and after disruptive events. More importantly, we will discuss what leaders must do when normal systems, procedures, and expectations are no longer sufficient. Please refer to the class PowerPoint slides as we go along this lecture. This video lecture is split into two parts. This is Crisis Management First Week's class, Part 1. Slide 1 is Introduction to Crisis Management. When people hear the word crisis, they often imagine a major disaster, such as an earthquake, fire, terrorist attack, active shooter incident, pandemic, or large-scale cyber attack. However, crises can take many forms. A crisis may begin with a relatively small operational problem that escalates because of poor communication, delayed decisions, misinformation, or inadequate preparation. For example, a temporary computer system outage may initially appear to be a routine technical incident. However, it can become a crisis if the outage interrupts essential services, compromises confidential information, prevents employees from working, creates financial losses, or causes the public to lose confidence in the organization. Crisis management is therefore not limited to emergency response. It includes the systems, plans, people, resources, and decisions that help an organization prevent disruption, prepare for emergencies, respond effectively, restore operations, and learn from experience. Crisis leadership goes even further. Leadership during a crisis requires more than following a manual or activating an emergency plan. It requires judgment, courage, communication, emotional control, flexibility, and the ability to guide people through uncertainty. During this lesson, we will discuss 5 major areas. First, we will define important terms such as incident, emergency, crisis, disaster, and disruption. Second, we will examine the crisis life cycle, including prevention, preparedness, response, recovery, and learning. Third, we will explore the difference between managing a crisis and leading people through a crisis. Fourth, we will discuss organizational resilience and continuity. Finally, we will examine why modern crisis leadership must address both physical and cyber threats. As we proceed, I encourage you to think about your own organization. Consider whether your workplace, school, business, government agency, or community organization is genuinely prepared for a crisis. Also consider whether the people in leadership positions know how to make decisions when information is incomplete and time is limited. Let us begin by defining the basic terms used in crisis management. Slide 2. Key terms: incident, emergency, crisis, disaster, and disruption. The terms incident, emergency, crisis, disaster, and disruption are sometimes used interchangeably. However, they do not mean exactly the same thing. Understanding the differences is important because organizations must determine the appropriate level of response. Let us begin with an incident. An incident is generally a limited event that can be managed through normal procedures and available resources. An incident may interrupt operations, but it does not necessarily threaten the survival or reputation of the entire organization. Examples include a minor workplace injury, a short-term technology outage, a small equipment failure, or a disagreement between employees. These events require attention, documentation, and resolution, but they may not require activation of the full crisis management team. An emergency is more serious. It is an urgent event that requires immediate action to protect life, property, health, or essential operations. Examples include a building fire, a medical emergency, a chemical spill, a bomb threat, or a severe weather warning. Emergencies require rapid decisions and may involve police, firefighters, medical personnel, security officers, or other specialized responders. A crisis is a high-impact event that creates uncertainty, time pressure, and potentially serious consequences for the organization and its stakeholders. A crisis is not defined only by the size of the event. It is also defined by the organization's ability to manage it. A situation becomes a crisis when normal procedures are no longer enough, when leaders face difficult decisions, or when the event threatens the organization's reputation, legitimacy, finances, operations, or future. For example, an employee's inappropriate social media post may initially appear to be an isolated incident. However, if the post becomes widely shared, damages the organization's reputation, attracts media attention, and leads to public outrage, it may become a crisis. A disaster is usually a large-scale event that causes widespread damage, casualties, displacement, or long-term disruption. Examples include major earthquakes, hurricanes, wildfires, floods, wars, pandemics, and large industrial accidents. A disaster may affect not only one organization, but also entire communities, cities, regions, or countries. Finally, a disruption is any interruption to normal operations. A disruption may be small or large, temporary or long-term. Examples include the failure of an internet provider, a transportation strike, a supplier delay, a power outage, the loss of a major employee, or a cybersecurity breach. Not every disruption becomes a crisis, but a disruption may escalate if the organization cannot control its effects. The important lesson is that these categories exist on a continuum. An incident may become an emergency. An emergency may become a crisis. A crisis may develop into a disaster. Leaders must therefore continuously evaluate the situation. They should ask, is this event contained? Can normal procedures handle it? Are additional resources needed? Are people at risk? Is the organization's reputation threatened? Could this event spread or create additional problems? These questions help leaders determine when escalation is necessary. Slide 3. The crisis life cycle. Crisis management should be understood as a continuous life cycle rather than a single response activity. The 5 stages we will examine are prevention, preparedness, response, recovery, and learning. The first stage is prevention. Prevention involves identifying risks and taking action to reduce the likelihood that they will occur. It also includes measures designed to reduce the possible impact of an event. Examples of prevention include maintaining equipment, installing fire detection systems, protecting computer networks, conducting background checks, enforcing safety policies, and monitoring potential threats. It is important to understand that not every crisis can be prevented. Natural disasters, geopolitical conflicts, and unexpected human actions may occur despite strong preparation. However, organizations can still reduce vulnerability and limit the potential consequences. The second stage is preparedness. Preparedness involves developing plans, identifying resources, training employees, clarifying responsibilities, and practicing possible scenarios before an event occurs. A crisis plan should answer several questions. Who has the authority to activate the plan? Who will be part of the crisis management team? Who will communicate with employees, customers, families, regulators, and the media? What systems must remain operational? Where will the crisis team meet if the normal workplace is unavailable? What alternative communication methods will be used if email, phones, or internet services fail? Preparedness also includes exercises and simulations. A written plan may look excellent on paper, but it may fail during a real crisis if employees have never practiced it. The third stage is response. Response begins when an incident or threat requires immediate action. The goals of response are to protect life, contain damage, stabilize operations, communicate with stakeholders, and prevent the event from becoming worse. During the response phase, leaders may need to make decisions with incomplete information. They may have conflicting reports, limited resources, public pressure, and little time. This is why preparation is so important. A trained organization does not need to invent every procedure during the crisis. It can rely on previously developed structures while still adjusting to the specific situation. The fourth stage is recovery. Recovery involves restoring essential functions, supporting affected individuals, repairing damage, rebuilding trust, and returning the organization to stable operations. Recovery may begin while the response phase is still taking place. For example, while emergency personnel are dealing with a damaged building, other leaders may already be arranging alternative facilities, temporary housing, financial assistance, or technology support. Recovery can take days, months, or even years. It may involve emotional recovery as well as operational recovery. Employees, students, families, or community members may experience fear, grief, stress, or trauma. The fifth stage is learning. After the immediate crisis has passed, the organization should conduct an after-action review. The purpose is not simply to assign blame. The purpose is to identify what worked, what failed, what information was missing, and what improvements are necessary. Leaders should ask, were roles clear? Was communication timely? Were resources available? Did the organization protect vulnerable stakeholders? Were decisions documented? Did departments cooperate effectively? The lessons should then be incorporated into updated policies, training programs, technology systems, and future exercises. An organization that returns to normal without learning has wasted an important opportunity. A crisis may reveal weaknesses, but it can also create the motivation needed to strengthen the organization. Slide 4. From managing crises to leading through them, we now turn to an important distinction: the difference between managing a crisis and leading through a crisis. Crisis management focuses heavily on systems, procedures, checklists, command structures, and operational control. These elements are necessary. Organizations need clear plans, communication protocols, evacuation procedures, technology backups, and chains of authority. However, procedures alone do not lead people. Crisis leadership focuses on human behavior, judgment, trust, direction, and meaning. During a crisis, employees and stakeholders look to leaders for reassurance and guidance. They want to know what is happening, what the organization is doing, what they should do, and whether the leaders are capable of handling the situation. A crisis leader does not need to know every answer immediately. In many cases, that would be impossible. However, the leader must communicate what is known, acknowledge what is unknown, explain what actions are being taken, and commit to providing updates. Silence can be extremely damaging during a crisis. When leaders do not communicate, people often fill the information gap with rumors, assumptions, or fear. At the same time, communication should not be careless. Leaders should avoid making promises that cannot be kept or sharing information that has not been verified. Effective crisis communication may sound like this: we are aware of the situation. At this time, we have confirmed the following facts. Our first priority is the safety of our employees and students. We are working with emergency personnel and technical experts. Some information remains unconfirmed, and we will provide another update within the next hour. This type of communication is calm, honest, and action-oriented. Crisis leadership also requires delegation. One leader cannot personally handle every operational, technical, legal, and communication responsibility. The leader's role is to establish priorities, assign responsibilities, coordinate teams, resolve conflicts, and make decisions that affect the entire organization. Strong leaders also recognize the emotional dimension of crises. People may be frightened, angry, confused, or exhausted. Employees may be worried about their families, jobs, health, or safety. A leader who ignores these emotions may lose the trust of the workforce. Compassion does not mean avoiding difficult decisions. It means recognizing how those decisions affect people. Therefore, managing a crisis means controlling the event as much as possible. Leading through a crisis means guiding the organization and its people through uncertainty while maintaining trust, purpose, and direction. This is the end of Part 1's lecture. Thank you for joining this class. Please refer to the next video for the second part of Week 1's lecture on crisis management. Thank you.